Hey guys, welcome back to another lesson. This week is online lesson number 5, and we are continuing with World War II ultranationalism and propaganda. A little bit of review from last week. Can you tell me what ultranationalism is and why it's a dangerous way of thinking? And how did ultranationalism affect peoples in Europe during 1930s and World War II? So if you're unable to do that, go back to last week's lesson and take a look at what effect ultranationalism had. Our learning goals of today is I want you to be able to identify other examples of ultranationalism. I'm going to give you some of the examples, and then I want you to compare the different ultranationalist governments. And we're going to look at what's called propaganda, and we're going to analyze types of propaganda and how effective they are. So ultranationalism, as we've talked about, is an extreme form of nationalism. It may cause people to use violence against others. We looked at Adolf Hitler and the Nazis as an example of ultranationalism. There's other examples, though. Nazi Germany is not the only ultranationalist government during the 1930s. Ultranationalism was spreading across Europe and Asia. And here are a few other famous examples. In Italy, we have the father of what's called fascism, Italy's Benito Mussolini. He believed Italy should be a very strong and powerful nation, demanding its citizens devote their lives to making it great. He kicked out the communists. He roughed up the mafia and threw them in jail. He wanted law and order. Benito Mussolini was would do these speeches in front of people and pump himself up and talk all powerful. He kind of wanted like another Roman Empire. Italy invaded Ethiopia because it wanted to expand its empire. Britain and France and Germany had other colonies, and he wanted Italy to have colonies. He encouraged Christianity. He thought that was a backbone of being a good Italian. Here's a speech where you can see how crazy Benito Mussolini was when he spoke to people. Japan. Japan had an emperor named Hirohito, and they believed he was more a god than he was a man. The Japanese were expected to give their life above all else for their country if needed to. Japan invaded China in the 1930s to expand their empire. They're an island, and they wanted more resources. Private businesses had to listen to the emperor and the government. Japan also started to build a large military. The Japanese were famous for invading China during the 1930s, and they did some horrible atrocities where they raped and murdered a lot of Chinese people in different cities. You can see in the video here. Another famous example that we'll talk lots about, Russia. Russia went through what's called a communist revolution in 1917. Communism is a system in which the government controls all aspects of life and business. So there is no private businesses. The government would control everything. There would be no Walmart or McDonald's or H&M. Everything would be provided by the government. Under communism, everyone is supposed to be considered equal, meaning there would be very few poor people and very few rich people. Everyone is supposed to get what they need. Russia had a leader named Joseph Stalin. He became the leader in the 1920s, and he was so controlling and feared. He killed anyone who was against him, and he sent many people to prison camps if they were suspected of being an enemy of Russia. So if you didn't like communism or you didn't like how the government was doing things, you could get a knock on your door in the middle of the night and maybe you'd never be seen again. Religion was outlawed as it was seen as dangerous to the nation's power and control. Russia did not want you praying to a god that you thought was the most important because Russia wanted the country to be the most important thing. Russia also had a very strong military. Here's a little video that goes over Joseph Stalin and his rise to power. Now, all of these countries had dictators, so a person who is in control of the country. And a dictator usually controls its population by using the following ways. Fear and terror. It often creates fear amongst its people so that they believe they need the government to keep them safe. It blames other people for their problems. So the Nazis blamed Jewish people. Russia and the communists blamed rich business people. And they use propaganda. And we'll talk about what that is a little more, but they control the media and they create posters and messages that make the people believe a certain something that helps the government control these people. Governments also banned other political parties. So there was no such thing as real democracy. You couldn't vote for someone other than the Communist Party. Ultranationalist dictators want total control. So in Russia, Stalin outlawed other political parties, making it impossible to vote for anyone but his party. It says here, in Soviet Russia, voters are so patriotic, Stalin once got 103% of the votes. Yeah, if you voted for someone other than the Joseph Stalin or who they wanted you to vote for, you could be sent to prison as a potential enemy. And these governments use propaganda. Propaganda means you're spreading carefully selected information. So you want people to believe a certain message. And it's to persuade them to support a goal. This information is usually biased, so it's in favor of the government. You can see here Joseph Stalin. He's known for murders and killing his enemies, but here he has him like a caring, loving father taking care of the children of the Soviet Union. Propaganda uses symbols to make the leader of a nation look powerful, but also honorable and relatable. So it might be a poster of Stalin where the children look up to him as a hero. Or Adolf Hitler leading all of the Nazis in Germany, and he's proud and strong with an eagle soaring above him. So these posters are designed to make basically evil people look like they're strong and caring and loving. This video goes over how the Nazis used the radio as a way of propaganda and getting their message across to Germans. And Russia, Germany, these aren't the only people using propaganda. So I want you to watch this little World War II era cartoon. It was a Looney Tunes cartoon in the United States. I want you to think, how is this cartoon an example of propaganda? Does it create fear? Does it blame others? Is it carefully selected information, or do you think it has a hidden message behind it? And it's kind of crazy, but propaganda continues today. In North Korea, they use a lot of propaganda that if we see it, would think it's silly. But North Koreans are basically expected to give their lives for North Korea. They view their leaders as a god. Kim Jong-un, I've heard funny stories where they believe he doesn't even go to the bathroom, right? Like these weird things where it's like they're not even human. When their leader died a few years ago, Kim Jong-un's father, people were expected to cry for days on end because if you stopped crying, people thought, well, what, do you not love the leader? So people kept fake crying for days on end until they had no tears left in them. If you're interested in looking up some other propaganda examples, just Google North Korea propaganda or put that into YouTube and see what comes up. It's pretty crazy what you can find. Once you finish the slideshow, I'd like you to begin your Chapter 5, Online Lesson 5 questions. Okay, so they have the slide numbers here. Some of them ask you to compare what we learned about Germany, Russia, Italy, and Japan. I want you to think about what is similar between these ultranationalist governments and what might be different. Okay. I also want you to go and find an example of a propaganda poster and look at how effective is it. So find one from World War II or even from today with North Korea and say, do you think it would actually convince you to believe something? I want you to look at these examples of old propaganda pictures, and what you can do is make up a funny, even though they're not in English, make up a funny line of what you think the words are saying, okay? So try and be creative. You can make kind of like some pretty funny scenarios when you have something like Stalin holding up a child. So for example, you could say, oh, that's a stinky diaper, because you don't know what it says in Russian. Good luck, guys. I know you can do a great job. Please turn this in by 1 week from after I've posted it, and I will talk to you at the online meet. Take care.